It's the JT Cho Show!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the JT Show. This is episode 14. Today is January 23rd of 2020. Can you believe that January is only about a week in one day from being over? I can't believe it, but time flies when you're having fun. But good thing I'm depressed. Just kidding. Anyways, I'm just wearing this jersey. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, I'm wearing my Aaron Rodgers jersey at the current moment because I do want to touch on that. The Packers lost. Horrible. It was a sad loss for me. Aaron's got a few years left. I've read a lot of comments like, oh, he's, one of my friends, Pepper, he jokes that he's washed, but I mean, come on, he's not. Some people are like, good, now retire and get out of here. And if you're a Packers fan, you can't have that attitude towards Aaron Rodgers. He's carried our franchise for years and years and years when we gave him no support in the first year that we actually gave him support. Unfortunately, the 49ers just had a way better game plan. LaFleur, I've been watching a lot of his press conferences on who he's going to keep. We've got a lot of free agents, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Green Bay because there's a lot of free agents that we have this year, a lot of people that we need to re-sign. Who are we going to bring back on possibly for defensive coach? We don't know yet. He said that we knew that, their entire game plan was to run the ball, and they prepared for it, and that was still the outcome. And it's so heartbreaking, too, because it's not like, oh, they're going to run it this series, and, here's the play action, and Green Bay committed to the run, and they would have stopped the run, but then they passed it. Jimmy Garoppolo threw like 6 passes, and just to watch the Packers get the ball pounded down their throats, it was just, it sucked. It was a tough game for me to watch, but, now there's football next year, and so, I just want to say, congrats. I did one thing that I hated too was they were exposed as frauds. They went 13-3 on the season. They're the number 2 seed. San Francisco was just the most complete team. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, I kind of agree this year. He's kind of just being an Eli Manning, He doesn't really need to do a whole lot, and he's just taking his team. He's on cruise control himself. He's not hitting the accelerator. If you hear that clicking noise in the background, by the way, that's my washer. I know it's completely unprofessional of me, but I got to catch up on some laundry. But that being said, Jimmy Garoppolo's team is complete. They're top 5 and everything, as reminded by Cut. But we've been saying it for a while now that I'm pretty sure I said it in episode 13 or 12 that San Francisco is the most complete team. And, that's not saying, oh, that's my Super Bowl prediction. Next week for episode 15, I want to do a Super Bowl preview where I break down kind of like I did for the, I have in the past. I want to break down, offense, defensive stats, who I think is going to win, and who I'm going to put some money on. Because what's the Super Bowl without putting a little bit of money on the line? You know what I'm saying? What's up, Cat? So, that being said, I'm really sad the Packers lost. The spring training starts. I'll be watching highlights of the XFL. To be honest, I'm not going to be really watching a whole lot of it. I've got better things to do. Yesterday on Wednesday, on the 22nd, I went to the comedy club. There's so many people trying to do stand-up there each week that I didn't make the cut, but I went on a short list just in case, they had extra time at the end. They didn't. Saw a lot of good acts. I saw some acts that needed to be worked on, but as, per the owner said, you should be trying out new material here. It was a good time. It was good to get kind of like the environment of, what's allowed to be said, it's a completely free environment, which I like, especially for a town like Ann Arbor. But in 2 weeks, because my work schedule at the current moment, I'll be obligated to work next Wednesday. But 2 weeks from now, hopefully I'll be getting on stage for, it's only 5 minutes, but, it'll happen. But that being said, let's get back to it. The Packer season's over, so it's time for me to wash this jersey. As you can see, it's kind of gotten worn and torn. I think I'll be picking a new jersey for next year to buy a new jersey. Might just be another Aaron Rodgers jersey, to be honest. But time to take it off, give it a wash, and hang it in the closet until fall starts. And why delay it? Why wear it for the whole thing? I'm doing laundry today, like I said. So, and if you noticed, I did get a haircut, but my hair, I didn't style it, so nothing wrong with wearing the Tiger Woods cap. I saw my first Masters preview for the year during football. One of the biggest regrets that I have was not throwing $1,000 with my boy Cut on Tiger, because we would have won $7,000 a piece. But those are one of those things like shoulda, woulda, coulda, but didn't. But what I do want to talk to you about today is the documentary. It's 3 parts. They're about an hour piece, a little more, I think like an hour 7, maybe an hour 10 for a couple episodes. But I just finished the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix, and for the most part, overall, I thought it was done well. Thought it covered a lot of angles. I liked the timeline, some of the people that they brought in, some of the clips that they played. And if you don't feel like watching it, hopefully within this next, I'm going to say 40 minutes, if you don't ever want to watch it, hopefully I can cover it enough to where you don't have to watch it. I could blow through it faster than that, but, let's just dive down into it. So they covered a lot with Aaron Hernandez. So they started talking about his childhood, how, as a 14-year-old, I believe he was dominating a football camp and was offered a scholarship at a very young age, and his family was very oriented in the college. I think it was UConn, maybe. I don't know. I just watched it and I can't remember those details, but it was an easy decision for him at that early age because his dad played there and his brother was already playing there. So he was already talented, and he's coming into high school, and they have this quarterback at the time, and they're interviewing him, and they're bringing in that quarterback's dad. And so basically, they start breaking down Aaron Hernandez from his early life and then all the way up to his suicide, and even after his suicide, which they got the family to release his brain, and then they scanned it, knowing more about CTE, because the medical professional that studied his brain, she's probably seen the most brain for contact injuries out of anybody in the entire country. So they cover from essentially the beginning of his early life, childhood, all the way until the end and a little bit past the end. And I will say, I do like how they shed light on more than just Aaron Hernandez. I know he was a high celebrity. He was he won a Super Bowl in New England. He was somebody that everyone had jerseys for. And there's a lot of things that, I remember that they talked about that I remember seeing. Like, for instance, there started to become internet trends. If you remember one of the earliest one, planking. Planking's where, you lay down, you're flat, and then you just lay there like a plank of wood. Batmaning, where you hang upside down by your feet on the doors and stuff. I remember I did that on the monkey bars pretty easily, but I tried to do it on the door and I hit the top of my head. So I didn't Batman very much often after that. But there was one that I remember called Hernandezing, and it's because when he was arrested for the murder, he was arrested, he was being charged, okay, so he wasn't arrested for murdering. He was arrested on suspicion of being the murderer. So when he got arrested, the cops put handcuffs on him, and they put his T-shirt over his arm, so his handcuffs were behind his back, but his arms were through his shirt. So people were taking off their shirts and putting their arms behind their back, and then they were Hernandezing. And man, internet trends are crazy, and like right now everyone's memeing, and I think it's evolved now into more like TikTok dances and like what's trendy and stuff like that. But that's like really how the internet's progressed from you know what it's what it's come from meme wise and internet trends wise. You forget that Hernandezing was it's like cat breeding. It's like throwing cheese in a baby's face. It was one of those things at the time where like a lot of people were just doing. I mean I don't think I did it for an online picture, but I probably did it at one point because I mean it's not funny to celebrate a murderer who should have most likely been prosecuted on three first degree murder, one first degree murder charge and two possibly second degree murder charges. But at the time, I was less educated than I am now, and I'm not very educated now. But so it talks about if we go in chronological order here, he goes to Florida instead. He gets away from his hometown, so he's in Florida. Recruited by Urban Meyer, who said he just recruits competitors first, and he worries about the skills and the rest later. And in the documentary, he says that he went to Bible study and he did all these other things for Aaron Hernandez. And during his time at the University of Florida, there's at least one documented drug usage failed test. So he failed one test for college football for drugs, so he was benched a game. But rumor has it that he failed multiple tests, but those are just speculations that you'd only know the truth if you had documentation and a credible source for someone that was there at the time. But for me, kind of dims the light on that whole Tim Tebow era because Tim Tebow's a devoted Christian and there's nothing wrong with that, and he's an outstanding player on and off the field. I know he's not playing the game of football anymore and he's moved to baseball, but having the character that he did at the time, it stinks that some of the things that were talked about in this documentary and even out of Aaron Hernandez's mouth really showed that decisions that staff and players were making at the time could affect a school from making millions of dollars. So sometimes, it's not the right thing. I understand there's a winning culture, but at the end of the day, when you're kind of covering up some things and that might have come up just because your team's competing for a national championship, I just think that's the wrong way to do it. But I've never been in that position. I know that I talk a strong game of, morally out of everything that I've learned in my life and the way that I was raised. If I was a head football coach, I would say now, like, yeah, dude, I would never tolerate that. But during that era and all that pressure and all that time, it would be tough to make those decisions. And who knows if the head coach, if it even got up to it, and if there's a whole lot of if factors, and that's sort of the reason why I wanted to talk about this documentary. It's better than some of the other ones that I've seen, and I won't watch the R. Kelly one because I'm just not interested in it, and I'm not going to watch the Michael Jackson one because the man died, and when people start saying all these things and accusing and reopening all these cases against people that are dead, well, the dead can't defend themselves, so it's just a one-sided bash fest. Those things might have happened, and if they did happen, I'm absolutely sorry that it did happen. Dave Chappelle has a very funny take on it, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to watch it because it's just a one-sided slam fest on a whole bunch of what-ifs that, at the time that it could happen, and at the time that it could have happened, I know that it's hard to make those decisions to speak up and talk about it, but you always should. And so if it's happening to you right now and you're listening to this, there's always going to be someone that's going to listen. But to come out after all these years that he's dead, it's just one of those things that, I'm just not going to be very interested to talk about some things that I didn't know about because I didn't follow Florida State football, and I didn't like Urban Meyer that much either. One of my favorite Michigan football games, which was Lloyd Carr's last game coached for the University of Michigan, was when Michigan beat Florida, I believe in the Orange Bowl, because I cannot stand the success that Florida was having, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Tim Tebow, not because he was a Christian, just because he was winning, I guess, and the University of Michigan wasn't. We had an okay squad. We had some pretty solid players. We had Henne, we had Hart, but Michigan, unfortunately, I know I'm getting a little off topic, but they're one of those programs that are probably going to be a twop. I have a speech impediment. Top 20 program probably for the next 20 years, unless there's some cultural changes as well. But getting back onto the Hernandez thing, some things that happened in Florida. He got into a fight at a bar when he was underage. And by the way, he left school early, so he's 17, going down to the University of Florida. And essentially what happens is he's doing so well that he starts getting this mentality of, I'm untouchable. He was underage at a bar, and the owner came up to him, and he said, hey, you got to pay this bill. And Aaron just cold cocked him right there. And the owner didn't want to press charges because, again, as the owner of a bar, yeah, it sucks that you just got punched by Aaron Hernandez, but if you're about to press charges and somehow ruin the chances of your surrounding area of that major college winning a national championship, no one's going to drink at your bar anymore. Oh, man, sorry for the yawns. I didn't sleep well last night, and I had to take my dogs to the vet early this morning. But, so there was that happened, and then there's another case that still remains open, and they can't prove it was Aaron Hernandez, but they kind of related it back to him that two people who lived were shot by a Hispanic, or I believe the police report said, they showed the police report in the documentary, it said something along the lines of Hawaiian or Hispanic, something of that nature, but unsolved case, but they possibly tied it to Aaron Hernandez, who had a short temper at the time, and they covered why. They covered the kind of childhood that he had growing up, and how his dad died at an early age, and how when his dad died, his mom was dating somebody else, and he didn't like staying at his house because there was another man sleeping in his father's bed, and his dad's the one that kept him in check, and after his dad died, that the person that kept him in check just really just vanished, and then he started making all these decisions that ultimately led up to him murdering and being a charged murderer for in the first degree for one person. So it comes to his senior year at Florida, and Urban Meyer urges Aaron to leave for the NFL draft, and because of his extensive history and his one failed drug test, Aaron has to get with his agent at the time and come up with a letter that says, I'll do more drug tests than any other player if I have to. He wrote a letter to all these teams, and essentially, with his talent, he should have been a first-round draft pick. They talk about it. They also talk about some things that NFL teams do. They do background checks. They do private investigations. They do test on the individual, and for all of his skills and his talent and his hustle and his dedication to the game itself. He had some of the top scores, but for maturity, he had one of the lowest scores. So they really do a pretty extensive background check, and because of his history at the University of Florida, And his maturity, he slipped to the fourth round in the same year Gronk went. So they took the Patriots took Gronk earlier that draft, and then later in the draft in the fourth round they took Aaron Hernandez. Now, Bill Belichick's doing this offense where Gronk's on one side of the ball and Aaron Hernandez is on the other side of the ball, and he really starts to change the game. But apparently, what happened before one of the years that they won the Super Bowl with Aaron Hernandez is that, and one of the reasons why I wanted to watch this documentary too is because the way the internet is these days is they automatically start making memes no matter what the situation is. If it's tragic, if the situation's sad, who it affects, they will take a situation like that and they start making memes. So one of the memes I kept seeing over and over was someone spills a glass of water and then it said Aaron Hernandez, and then it's Danny DeVito off of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and it's a picture of him with a caption. So anyways, I was there and I started blasting. It's when Frank's on the news. That's the meme. But I was like, man, he must have shot somebody for just spilling a glass of water. And so, he wasn't charged in this case, but allegedly there was a couple at a bar and they spilled the drink and it might have got on his shoes or the people that he was with, and he was angry. So when they left, he pulled up next to him with a gun. Bam, 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 bam. Shot off his weapon and basically drove off from there. And then he allegedly took that vehicle to his cousin's house and then stored it in her garage, covered it up, had cobwebs. And there's a lot of factors in this documentary about Aaron Hernandez. So essentially when investigators were piecing together the murder charge that originally got him charged for first-degree murder, they did a really good job in this documentary of not just talking about Aaron Hernandez. They talked about the other parties, their family. They did a background on the man that he's murdered's life. So they talked about things that the Patriots did too. So if you remember, they had a jersey exchange for the New England Patriots. So Aaron Hernandez gets arrested for allegedly at the time murdering this person. And so the New England Patriots, you could bring your Aaron Hernandez jersey, you could bring it down, and you can exchange it for free for like any other jersey on their team. So there's a lot of PR involved. They covered the background, how the other person that he killed was dating his fiance's sister, and that he was playing semi-professional football, and they interviewed his teammates, and they did a really good job of piecing a lot of missing information together. One thing that's weird to me too is when you hear a dead man's conversations. So in the documentary, they play a lot of his phone conversations. So he'll be talking to his mom, to his fiance, to his cousin, which was one of the biggest people that Aaron could open up to. So if we backtrack a little bit, when Aaron was in high school and he was unhappy that his mom was seeing somebody else, he spent a lot of time open at his cousin's house, and apparently that was the closest individual that individual was the closest person that he could open up to. So even when his cousin was brought into court, she got contempt of court because she wouldn't testify against Aaron Hernandez. So she herself did jail time. She had cancer. She eventually died from cancer, which is unfortunate, but she chose family over the truth, and she stuck by Aaron all the way to the end for him. But so Aaron, it talks about the evidence that the police gathered and how sloppy of a job that Aaron Hernandez did uncovering it. And I'm not saying that he could have did a better job. He probably would have got away with it, but he's not a professional murderer. A lot of the times he said, he's trying to be a gangster at night and a football player during the day. Well, he was just getting caught up in a lot of bad scenarios. And so, like, some of the things that they found, they tracking cell phone towers and then using his own home security system. Um, they found out that the time of the murder and the time that it would take from him to leave the site of the murder and then get to his house was the exact same time that it would take. So they found the time of murder, and then they looked at the tape of when he arrived home, and they figured out that you know one, two, these are a perfect amount of time to get from A to B. Um, they tracked his text messages, which he left a box at a movie theater, and his fiance picked it up. She never looked in the box, and they took his home security footage system, and they saw that there's the same box, and she said she took it to a dumpster, and she can't remember which dumpster that she took it to. Uh, Basically, him installing that home security system for his own protection from a previous crime that he committed um, essentially led to his downfall. So, why he installed this security cam footage? So, he was down in Florida. He went to party with his buddy who got him a gun, and the person that he was with who got him the gun for the uh, he allegedly killed two people for spilling water on his shoes. And they went down to Florida and they were at a strip club, a gentleman's club they call it. But um, Aaron kept being really paranoid, saying like, "Oh, I think these two dudes are cops over there." And then he goes, "Why would cops be here?" And the other guy said, "Probably for that dumb stuff that you did, and when probably for that dumb stuff you did when he shot those two people." So the dude fell asleep. He woke up. Aaron Hernandez allegedly fired one shot and hit him in the head. Um, Detectives the next day were talking to the man that he shot because he lived, and he didn't give up the name. And ultimately, that was one of the key moments in the second court case that Aaron went to. Um, but there's a lot of moving factors that I didn't really know. I remember, like I said, I remember the Jersey exchange. I remember the Hernandezing, as they called it. I even remember Tim Tebow playing on the Patriots for that little stint, if you forgot about that. And the Patriots, because it was a police investigation and the way the Patriot way is, there wasn't a lot of comments from the head coach, from players, from anybody during the time. So the Patriots, unfortunately, at the end they came out. Robert Kraft said that his organization and what he calls his family were duped, and that basically the person that Aaron Hernandez was on the field and at practice was a completely different person than Aaron Hernandez was on the inside and off the field. Now, 2015, the first court case began. Honorable E. Susan Garsh was the judge, and one of the hardest things, because you're in Connecticut, and the Patriots are headed to the Super Bowl. So when you're on the jury, you can't look at any information that might make you biased one way or the other. And so the judge essentially, I think it's called a gag order. It might be called something different. I should have did a little research on that, but I literally I finished the last episode and I was like, let's talk about it. But she urges the jury not to look up any information on Aaron Hernandez, but she wasn't going to prevent them from watching the Super Bowl. Now, that would have been so hard for me that if I, let's say that I was living in Wisconsin as a resident, and then I was selected for jury, and then it happened to be somehow somebody connected to the Green Bay Packers organization, and then that judge going, "Oh, well, due to the circumstances and the way that the media talks about everything these days in between the plays, you're not allowed to watch the Super Bowl." I would probably risk going to jail because, man, it would be hard for me not to watch the Super Bowl. And the only thing that would make it better is if somehow there'd be no way to do it but you would essentially just have to lock yourself in a box with no internet. You'd have to get a TiVo device or your home recording device, and you would have to record it and then just play ignorant, and you couldn't even get on your phone or anything. There's no way to do it these days to where you could wait that long, but she didn't. She even talks about it in the court case. She didn't ban any of the jury from watching the Super Bowl. The first court case goes on. There was rumors about there's just rumors about, will he get off? Was it somebody else? And a lot of people were torn. His mom was torn. His cousin again was arrested for contempt of court. But at the end of the day, from installing that home security system in his own home, his defense of it wasn't me, it was my friend who got shot and these two other people that I was hanging out with. They were the reasons. They were the ones that pulled the trigger. But he was seen in his own home with his new child, laying by the pool, fist bumping, handing these guys his baby, chilling, having no remorse. So at the end of the day, the evidence that they collected from his house ultimately, kind of led to his first conviction, which the jurors took a full week. They were working. They took a full week. They took full days and they worked on it. So one thing that you look